Today I will look at only the state of Andhra Pradesh and the poll data that is available officially about the assembly poll. Whatever data, whatever figures that I use today are all from the Election Commission of India, their press conferences, their portal, or the APCO's press conferences as reported in the media. I did not contribute any piece of data to this. You have 4,13,33,702 registered electors. That is the total electorate. And 80.66 was the polling, which would come to 3,33,39,764. In our state, the total booths were 46,389, and the average electors per booth average is 892. There are about 14 constituencies which had about 1,000 thereabouts, 1,007 in some and 1,030 in some other. As of 5 a.m., the CEO of Andhra Pradesh had announced that the polling was 68.04. As of 8 p.m., the polling was a slight increase to 68.12. It's just about 0.08%. And that comes to, overall state, comes to 33,064 votes between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. Then at 8 p.m., as of 8 p.m., the polling was 68.12. And at 11:45 p.m., the Election Commission told us that the polling percentage had gone up to 76.50. And 4 days later, 4 days after the polling day, the polling percentage was 80.66. That is the final figure. But after the final figure was announced, before that, on 13th, the polling day, late night, APCO had announced that polling was still continuing in 3,500 booths, and it ended. The last person to exercise franchise did that at 2 a.m. That's 14th early hours. He announced that in the morning of 14th. I'll just recap. Final figure was announced on the 17th. That was 80.66%. That was an increase of 4.16% after 11:45 until 2 a.m. That amounts to 17,19,248. That's the gross voting between 11:45 and 2 a.m. But please keep in mind that this polling happened only in about 3,500 booths, not the entire state. The total hike, if you want to recap, between 5 p.m. on the 13th May 24 and 2 a.m. on 14th May 24 was 0.08%. Between 5 and 8, between 8 and 11:45, 8.38, between 11:45 and 2 a.m. in 3,500 booths, it is 4.16%. Altogether comes to 12.62%. Gross voting is, as I said, 33,000 odd between 5 and 8. Between 8 and 11:45, it works out to be 34,63,767, and 11:45 to 2 a.m. it comes to 17,20,000, roughly 17,19,482. So altogether it comes to about 52 lakhs odd. We'll take a quick look at the pace of polling. Until 5 p.m., that is 10 hours, because the polling started at 7 o'clock. The polling percentage was 68.0%. From 5 to 8 in 3 hours, it was only 0.08%. From 8 to 11:45, in 3 hours 45 minutes, the increase was 8.38%. That adding 34,63,767. However, but between 11:45 and 2 o'clock in the morning, the addition was 4.516, which amounts to 17,20,000. Because this happened only in 3,500 booths. On an average, this was 491 votes per booth. It is an average. It could be less in some booths, it could be more in some booths. But if it is less in some booths, it necessarily have to be more in other booths. Suppose it was 490 in a booth, then in some other booth it has to be 491. So that's how the average works. I don't want to go into every data point, but I want to narrow it down to just these 3,500 booths. And let me be a fly on the wall in one of the polling stations. Let me tell you what I would have seen there. It's 3,500 booths, 491 average per booth. 11:45 to 2 a.m. It's 135 minutes. What does 135 minutes, 491 votes per minute? We had 3.6 votes. So let's say 3 votes. Let's say 3 votes. I mean, generally, if it is 0.5 or more, it's 4. But anyway, let's be a bit conservative. Let's put it at 3.6. Roughly 3 voters a minute. That means 20 seconds per voter. And please remember, Andhra Pradesh had simultaneous polls for Assembly and Lok Sabha. And because there are 2 machines and 2 compartments, each machine has a dead time of 7 seconds. Because once you press it, then VVPAT, the symbol flashes 7 seconds, and then go to the second one, 7, take it out. If you take out 14 seconds of this 20, then you're left with 6 seconds. Then what does a voter has to do in the 6 seconds or 20 seconds, let's say? You enter, because I'm a fly on the wall, remember. Somebody entered and he or she met the party agents, polling agents, showed the slip, then went to polling officer number 1. Polling officer also checks, then goes to number 2. Number 2 takes your signature or thumb impression and puts the indelible ink. Then another officer activates the machine. You go into the compartment, press it, then go to the next compartment, press it again, and then come out. All this was done in Andhra Pradesh in 20 seconds. Now, that's our speciality. What happened in that booth? I'm still on the wall. See, till 5 p.m., 8.04% was the polling, which means that if you take the average size of the booth, 68.04 is coming to 606 votes. Then between 5 and 8 p.m., you added 7 votes. Another 7 people came and voted. Between 8 and 11:45, 74 voters came and voted. However, between 11:45 and 2 a.m., in 2 hours 15 minutes, 135 minutes as I said, we had 400, we have a room only for 37 votes. Because you had to, your maximum was 724, 80.66. But the ECA data, as we divided the entire gross voting by 3,500, it comes to 491, which means 454 were over and above the votes that had room for. And if you add 491, that comes to 1,178, whereas no booth had such number. Average number was 892, as I said. This is 286 votes in excess of the. Now, even if the booth had 100% polling, it still had an excess of 286. That makes the polling percentage, at least in one booth, well, it could be in 3,500 booths, 132% polling in those booths. Now, I want to be the devil's advocate here. In other words, I want to be the advocate for ECI. 3,500 booths, somebody might say that, they could have multiple polling booths inside a building. Well, if that is so, between 5 and 8, when in 3 hours only 7 votes were polled, if there are multiple, how would one explain just 7 votes polled in 3 hours? Even in one polling station, it's difficult to explain. If it had multiple, then it's even bizarre. Then another point. You see, it's announced at 5. It could have been, the figure could have been from 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. Isn't it? That's also one of the arguments. Well, if that is the case, 5 p.m. percentage could be from 3 p.m. because it takes time for the election commission or the CEO to gather the information, to get the information from all the centers. But nowhere does the election commission or the CEO say, I'm announcing my information. And it is very clearly stated in all the releases that as of 5, as of 11. Because Dr. Qureshi would know, 7 to 9 is announced at 10 o'clock. 9 to 11 is announced at 12 o'clock. 11 to 1 is announced at 2 o'clock. 1 to 3 was announced at 5 o'clock. 4 o'clock. 3 to 5 was announced at 6 o'clock. So as of 5 is as of 5, not announced at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock thing was announced at 6 o'clock. Every slot was announced at after 1 hour. Okay. Even if, for argument's sake, like the devil's argument, even if you want to take it that, it's as not as of, but at that point to whatever information that they had. Let's take it that way. In that case. Okay, that means if the data 68.04 was from 3 p.m., not 5 p.m. 3 p.m. it was 3 p.m. data announced at 5 o'clock. Let's say, take it that way. Which means that 68.04 had been polled by 3 p.m. And that means that booth, 606 votes were already cast by 3 p.m. That would be 75 voters per 1 hour. At that pace, the next 2 hours, each booth could have polled 756 votes. And that would make the polling percentage, at least in these booths, 84%. Way more than the state average of 80.66. That means polling could have been, even if you take 756 and 84%, polling could have been over with that kind of a pace by 5 p.m. Let's say that was a little even slower, not the same pace, but slower. Then if not 5, 6, if not 6, 7, if not 7, 8. Why till 2 a.m.? Why did it go? Next. Let me take another scenario here. If 68.04 were completed by 3, average pace would have been 8.6 per hour. If that is the case, 80.66 could have been reached by 4:30 itself. Maybe 5:30, maybe 6:30, maybe 7:30, maybe 8:30. Why till 2 a.m.? What if the 68.04% was from 2 p.m., not even 3? That means the polling average pace was 9.72 per hour. In that case, 80.66 could have been reached by 3:20 in the afternoon. Okay, not 3:20, 4:20. Well, not 4:20, 4:30, or 5:30, or 6:30, or 7:30, or 8:30, or even 9:30, 10:30. Why till 2 a.m.? Election Commission's rule book says that at no point of time you should have 3 or maximum 4 in the polling booth. Nowhere. I want to know, and you should also want to know. I'll tell you why we should know. Which are these 3,500 booths? Which are these? Where are they from? Which constituencies? Anybody who has already entered the queue will have to be given tokens. The presiding officer has to note it down in the diary. Videos of waiting voters, discernible faces. They should have been, where are those records? One more thing. Last person, as the AP CEO claims, to have voted at 2 a.m. when he would have entered the queue. Nobody could enter the queue after 6 o'clock. So 5:59 maximum, isn't it? So somebody who entered the queue in a polling station at 5:59 or 6 p.m., the last person to go there at 6 p.m. had exercised the franchise at 2 a.m. That is, he was or she was in the queue for 8 hours. Now what happened? Let's look at the strike rate. TDP's strike rate was 94%. Janasena Party's strike rate was 100%. BJP's strike rate was 80%. YSRCP's strike rate was 6.2%. TDP with 45.60% vote could win 135 seats. Janasena with 6.87% won 21 seats out of 21 seats because its strike rate was 100. BJP with 2.83 won 8 seats. YSRCP with 39.37% won 11 seats. The total discrepancy between preliminary voting figure works out to be about 30,000 votes per constituency if you spread across all the 175 constituencies. But you know, no spread can be even. And if the hike is in select booths in targeted constituencies, then you had seen, just go back one slide. This could be the result. It can slaughter people and candidates and parties. It could also lift some political parties, fantastic heights. Now the question arises, are the victors in this passive, unknowing recipients of the bonanza? Are the vanquished innocent victims? I don't know. What I can say that this raises very serious questions about the integrity of our electoral process. Therefore, the 2024 AP Assembly mandate becomes questionable. I want, all of us want, credible answers to the concerns that we have raised. So far, what I have presented to you is agnostic of who is a winner and who is a loser. I'm not bothered about that. I'm also not claiming that had that not taken place, we could have had in Andhra Pradesh another government, another chief minister, or another MLA in my constituency, or different MLA. I'm not claiming that also. It may be, it may not be. Instead of winning by 10,000 votes, somebody could have won by just 2,000 votes. I'm not questioning the outcome, final outcome. But even if there is one vote difference between what was actually polled and what was counted, what was reported, it has to be a concern for all of us. The whole process looks suspicious. I'm also not trying to hazard any guesses on how this could have happened. Is it man or is it machine? I'm not going into that. I just want answers to this. I want to know how this wonderful feat was achieved in Andhra Pradesh. Simple. Because you see, another thing, we recently had a World AI Summit. You remember, in Delhi? AI Summit showcased all the AI achievements. Now, I can suggest here, Qureshi Sahab, we should have World Democracy Summit here. And in that Democracy Summit, we can have a democracy tourism circuit. Take people to these 3,500 booths where people have waited from 11:45 in the night to 2 o'clock in the morning and identify, because you would have had videography, identify the last person who voted at 2 a.m., who had entered the booth premises at 6 p.m. Felicitate him. Because we do felicitate people. Till recently we used to felicitate and talk about the first person who voted in 1951-52, and we also very proudly talk about that one polling booth in Gir Forest in Gujarat, which was put up there for just one voter. who's a priest in a small temple, who doesn't have family, and just to get him vote, there is one booth established only for his sake. Now, this is also another reason to celebrate for us. Thank you very much.